Something extraordinary happened this week in Mississippi, in a town remembered for one of the ugliest chapters of the civil rights movement. For the first time in history, Philadelphia, Mississippi elected an African-American mayor. His name is James Young, and you're going to hear his amazing story in just a moment. For many, just the mention of the town's name brings back memories of three young men, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. In 1964, the three civil rights workers were ambushed and murdered. They were buried in a shallow grave. It took decades, but a former Ku Klux Klan member was finally convicted for masterminding the killings. Now, for Philadelphia, as for Mississippi, much has changed since then, but perhaps not everything. Back in 2005, I spoke to Harlan Major. He was once the mayor of Philadelphia, and as you'll see, he believed, even then, that the Ku Klux Klan did a lot of good. Here's some of my interview. Take a look. Why do you believe the Ku Klux Klan at any time in their history was a peaceful organization and did a lot of good?
Because if there was anybody in the community or the neighbors that would not take care of the family, too sorry to work, or waste their money and not take care of the wife and their children, the Klan would pay them a visit. If there was somebody in the neighborhood that was messing around somebody's house with somebody else's wife, the Klan would pay them a visit. And they visited more white people and they whipped more white people than they did black people. And this was, like I said, in the 30s.
Are you kidding? You were a twice elected official. Don't you have a responsibility to be aware of the history, not only of your town but the country we live in? I mean, if you're going to make comments about the Ku Klux Klan, shouldn't you read some history books about it?
Well, I didn't plan to be making any comments about it. I was summoned to be up there. I didn't believe even that the people were killed. I thought it was a publicity stunt. Until later on, while they were looking for them, the FBI and whoever else were having those search parties, then I realized that it had actually happened. But I didn't believe it before that. You thought
at the time that James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, Michael Schwerner, that it was a publicity stunt by...
Exactly. You're right. And it should not have happened. We were never in favor of that type of an operation. We wasn't in favor of what they did, came down here, but certainly not killing anybody.
You're saying they should not have been killed, but they shouldn't have come down there?
Well, I'm saying that the people that were responsible for their death were the people that organized them, whatever towns they were in. I think one, two of them were from New York City.
I really try to be respectful of all my guests, and I respect you and your position. But you just said that these three men who were murdered in the dead of night and buried in an unmarked grave and just abandoned and you know, bulldozered over. You said that the people who were responsible for their deaths are the people who sent them there to do voter registration, not the actual people who pulled the triggers?
I say they were responsible for them without schooling them, without proper training them, without giving them proper protection when they come down here, because they should have known they were coming into a hostile environment. It would have happened in any city, in any state. Where are you? Where am I talking to you?
New York City.
All right. If I recruited a group of young people, and I have two granddaughters that would be the right age for that right now, to go in and say, we're going to clean up the drugs, the prostitution, the money laundering, the gang wars and stuff like that in the city of New York, we're just going to move in and take over, because that stuff is illegal. And it was when I was up there in the military. Do you think we'd see the sunrise the next morning if we went in there forcibly changing that?
Sir, it's just sad that in this day and age, you're comparing people who came down to try to help African Americans who are living in your community and have been there for hundreds of years, people who had the right to vote and couldn't vote and weren't being allowed to vote and weren't being allowed to sit at lunch counters. You're comparing people who came down to help those people to someone like trying to root out drug dealers and killers and rapists?
No, I'm comparing the situation. They were uninvited. We were making progress down here. It was slow, and it wasn't at the speed that the federal government, and it wasn't at the speed with whoever these were that organized this wanted to.
Two of them were from New York, but you know what? James Chaney was from Meridian, Mississippi, and that's where my grandmother's from. Yeah. That's where my dad was born, in Quitman, Mississippi, not too far from where you are right now. And I got to tell you, you know, what's wrong with someone from Meridian, Mississippi, an African American, saying, I want to be able to vote?
Not anything wrong with it as far as I'm concerned. The timing was bad, and we were more or less invaded.
When was the right timing to give African Americans the vote?
I don't have the answer to that question. There's no way I could.
Well, sir, I appreciate you coming on the program and giving us your perspective, and we do appreciate it. Mayor Harlan Major, appreciate it very much, sir.
All right, thank you.
twice an elected official in the town of Philadelphia. Again, that was 4 years ago about. We caught up with Harlan Major today. He did not back away from his belief that the Ku Klux Klan did some good work, and as he said, some bad things too. Major also said Philadelphia is doing great and invited us to stop by any time. I have a family reunion in the area this summer, and I'm hoping to do just that. As we told you, the town is also making history with its first African-American mayor, Ed Lavendera, tonight, Uncovering America.
There is a dark past here. For decades, Philadelphia, Mississippi was the white-hot center of a stain left by the Ku Klux Klan. So many never thought they'd ever live to see a day like this.
Look out, man! We did it! Congratulations! Thank you, man.
Born and raised here, James Young was just elected the city's first black mayor.
Why do you think you're so emotional? When you've been treated the way we've been treated. Excuse me. I guess maybe that's what's been boiling up, and it finally come to the surface.
An angry boil that infamously began 45 years ago. Jim Prince runs the local newspaper.
Philadelphia, I'm resolved, will always be connected to what happened here in 1964.
That year, 3 civil rights workers were murdered driving down a country road. The savage attacks were a defining moment of the civil rights era and immortalized in the movie Mississippi Burning. Prince says the scab from that wound is finally falling off.
This city is 55% white, so the fact that Philadelphia, Mississippi, with its notorious past, could elect a black man as mayor, it might be time to quit picking on Philadelphia, Mississippi.
I can't believe it. I said, who would have thought a little country boy like me would be mayor of Philadelphia, Mississippi in '09? I couldn't even wrote that in a fairy tale. Hey, how you doing, man?
As for James Young, he says he won by shaking hands and knocking on doors, but he only beat the white incumbent candidate by 46 votes. Young knows that for every hug he gets, some still look the other way.
We have some very small pocket that'll never change. That's what we got to deal with.
Some of James Young's earliest memories of growing up in this house here on Ivy Street are of fearful nights listening to the Ku Klux Klan roam through these neighborhood streets in the middle of the night. His father sleeping on the sofa in the living room with a gun on his lap. But the new mayor of Philadelphia hasn't left that very far behind. He lives now just across the street. Young was 9 years old when the civil rights workers were killed. He was one of the first black students to integrate white schools here. He worked as a hospital housekeeper until a white boss recommended he become a paramedic. Young worked his way up to become the city's EMT director. That catapulted him to his first elected job. And now, he's the most important public official in Philadelphia.
It just beginning to sink in the places that we were locked out. I'm going to have the key. The places that we couldn't go, I've got the key. How y'all doing?
We're so happy.
I know it.
It took 45 years, some might say at last, justice has truly been served for all the people who live here. Ed Lavendera, CNN, Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Give me 5.
Well, changes have come.